Hello, you're on Initiative Africa. My name is Asha Sampit. Welcome to this new edition of your weekly magazine featuring Africa on the move through smart innovations and initiatives that work. Let's get on with the show with our top stories today. Today we invite you to follow the second part of the interview of Khalbous, the rector of the Agence Universitaire de la Francophonie. This academic and former Minister of Higher Education in Tunisia tells us more about his experience and his plans for sub-Saharan Africa. Here's our guest of this week again.
I've always worked extensively in Africa and encouraged international mobility, especially amongst academics, students, teachers, researchers. And therefore, when I was a minister, I had the opportunity to build on that by implementing a policy focusing on the international movement of students from sub-Saharan Africa, for the Maghreb and in Tunisia in particular.
Homeschooling in times of COVID, Uganda experimented it through educational television programs by Aunty Jovita, an exceptional teacher.
Dealing with children is just a passion. I just love children the way they are. And if I can make one child happy, to me, that is a blessing.
Football to the rescue of slums in the suburb of Nairobi in Kenya. This club combines sports and social mission to help young people.
If you're going to get something from the community, you should be putting something back into the community. And that's where we made it into a community development project using football as the starting point.
On March 18, 2020, the president of Uganda, Yoweri Museveni, announced the closure of schools in the country due to the COVID-19 pandemic, a situation experimented with great difficulty by many parents on the continent for endless months. But in Uganda, a teacher known as Aunty Jovita decided to launch a television program for children locked down in their homes, a source of relief and comfort for children and parents alike, as our correspondent in Kampala, Kenny Kiza, found out.
I'm called Jovita Ajuna Banguha, Mrs., but children know me as Aunty Jovita, a woman, a lady, a friend of the children in this country. And dealing with children is just a passion. I just love children the way they are. And if I can make one child happy, to me, that is a blessing. As long as I see a child smile, as long as I see a child make at least a gesture of showing that they are happy, to me that is enough.
That decision to close educational institutions no doubt adversely affected Uganda's school-going population, which is estimated at 15 million, following the declaration of the first lockdown in March 2020. This drastic measure was taken to prevent rapid spread of COVID-19.
It is wise that we temporarily remove these concentration points by closing all the primary and secondary schools, pre-primary, as well as all the universities.
Parents were left with no choice other than resorting to homeschooling, a system that is totally alien to Ugandan parents. This was not possible for many parents. This prompted one passionate educationist, popularly known as Aunty Jovita, to step in and fill the gap by designing radio and TV messages targeting primary school and kindergarten-going children.
First of all, I noticed it with my children. Then I noticed with the parents who kept calling me and saying, at least Jovita, you record a voice message and you talk to my children. Maybe they will listen, they will understand that this is what is going on. Then I came up with messages, thanks to Uganda Broadcasting Corporation, which has been airing these messages, and many of the local radio stations. These messages were meant for the children, so that they also feel they are part of the struggle, they are part of the system, they are part of the pandemic, and they are also being thought after.
The closure of schools in Uganda has not only affected children's education, but also in a way, children's diet, their social development, and to some extent, their protection, especially from violence in some homes. Every passing day the children are not at school stresses them and creates anxiety and frustration from lack of exercise, play, and interact with their colleagues.
15 million children who are being affected, they stayed home. they became anxious, or they are still anxious. They were stressed. They got a lot of fear. They didn't know when schools would open again, whether they would ever go back to school and see their friends, their teachers, their activities, do the activities they used to do, go for their birthday parties, go for swimming. So there was a lot of anxiety around the child's mind. And unfortunately, many people, as they were communicating, they kept communicating to the adults, thinking that the information from the adults would trickle down to the children. But the children needed someone to talk to them directly.
These are some of the TV episodes that Aunty Jovita created that air daily on government TV channels. The messages were aimed at empowering and giving the children hope that not all is lost during the COVID-19 pandemic period.
And this could be one of the projects you do for yourselves. You can have rabbits, rare chicken, and by the end of the lockdown, you have the project of your own.
Delegating responsibilities is a common norm in Africa, where parents leave the parenting role to teachers, housemaids and relatives. Aunty Jovita saw the coming of the COVID-19 pandemic as a wake-up call for parents to realize their crucial role in child upbringing.
But the lockdown, you're under one roof, even in a very small house, by the way, no space, you get angry, you still see the same person. You have beaten someone, you still see the same person. And we have to accommodate one another. So it is during this time that we should teach children even how to accommodate one another, how to appreciate one another, how to share the little we have, and also how to love God. This is a time when we should be praying more as a family than ever. In whatever religion, we should be praying, and also teach our children what we know about our religion, so that when they open up and we go back to our normal, the normal lifestyle, we feel we've done something for that child of mine.
Judging from the positive feedback from parents, Aunty Jovita is happy that her messages are being received and appreciated.
We have parents who say, at least Jovita, when you talked about not loitering, my children are always home. And what is funny, when I told some of the messages where I was saying, don't go to the shops alone, don't walk at night, given some of our homes, some of our families, of course, we remember that we don't have salt at around 6 when we are cooking. So they call you, Jovita, you run to the shop and buy salt. And then the child said, but Aunt Jovita said we shouldn't go to the shops at night, mommy.
When all is said and done, every parent in Uganda is looking forward to the reopening of schools to also see those young ones in lower primary schools going back after almost 2 years of not looking at the blackboard, especially those who cannot afford online classes.
But the truth is, if we follow the presidential guidelines.
As I mentioned earlier, our guest is resourceful and do not lack ideas when it comes to advancing academia in sub-Saharan Africa. Khalbous, rector of the Agence Universitaire de la Francophonie, has long worked on the themes of international mobility and South-South cooperation. He explained to our journalists Laurent Soustras and Lionel Cochois how he was going to anchor these questions in the new French-speaking university strategy. Professor Khalbous, in your previous career, you were a professor of business management in a university. You directed HEC Carthage. Is this where the mission to link the university and the economic spheres along with the sciences came from?
Oui, forcément, quand on est gestionnaire, à la base, on est sensible.
Of course, when you are a manager at heart, you're aware of this issue. As manager and academic, you always want to bring the two worlds together. So yes, I had the good fortune to run the first business school in Africa, HEC Carthage. And then I directed the Ministry of Higher Education, therefore research in my country, and as a result I oversaw reconciling the two. This was necessary to precisely give this economic dimension that we were talking about earlier to the university, which is a central dimension for a nation's development. Today, innovation in research must serve a country's economy, and I think our universities can fully play this role.
As you said, you were also Minister of Higher Education and Scientific Research in Tunisia. What did you learn from holding such a portfolio in government?
qui était le plus intéressant, c'est la différence de vision.
What was most interesting was the difference in vision between decision makers and young people.
Et les jeunes. L'avantage d'avoir été un enseignant pendant
The advantage of having been a teacher for several years, of having lived closely with young people, is to be able to see things from the point of view of young people. All the reforms and changes that are being proposed must focus on the student as the pivot of the system.
Et c'est cette résistance face à la mise en
Which is not necessarily the case. And it's this resistance to recognizing the student's viewpoint due to an old-fashioned system that is perhaps the most difficult to manage and the biggest challenge at the same time. The second very interesting element is an even greater awareness of the international dimension. When you are a minister, you are faced with international exchanges with countries that sometimes are like your own, sometimes are not. Countries with which we have important partnerships, others less so. They can be very different. And this difference makes us even more aware of the need for international collaboration. These are the two most striking elements in a career in relation to the content we put together, of course.
Par rapport au contenu de ce qu'on faisait, bien sûr.
You had a policy of facilitating the mobility of students from sub-Saharan Africa. What are your plans for sub-Saharan Africa in particular?
J'ai toujours beaucoup travaillé en Afrique et encouragé la mobilité.
I've always worked extensively in Africa and encouraged international mobility, especially amongst academics, students, teachers, researchers. And therefore, when I was a minister, I had the opportunity to build on that by implementing a policy focusing on the international movement of students from sub-Saharan Africa, for the Maghreb and in Tunisia in particular. We facilitated the creation of a host agency, but above all, we allowed public universities, which had only recruited through the public system, to directly recruit international students, and in particular African students. We set up a scholarship system, which is very effective for the countries we wanted to collaborate with, but especially in relation to the specific needs of the countries of origin. And that is very important for South-South collaboration between our nations. So a lot of actions like that. But the idea is that African students today can go to universities in the South, where we have a good standard, without having to go to countries in the North, where it is extremely expensive.
D'aller dans des pays du Nord où c'est extrêmement cher.
The standard of living is acceptable. The university level is quite good, and afterwards they return home with a solid background, but one especially adapted to African realities. It's important to keep strengthening this. Knowing this need for an important South-South collaboration, when I was able to, I extended this policy at a larger, more international level at the AUF. We have offices in more than 40 African countries. We also have teams there and member universities. 400 African universities, in fact, are members of AUF. We are by far the leading African network too. The AUF is still referred to as the #1 university network in the world. But above all, we're the first in Africa. It's the continent where we have the most members, and therefore the possibility of increasing mobility within Africa and in partnerships. Today we're doing really well, and we must clearly consider the strategy of South-South and inter-African partnerships as a priority.
Dans notre stratégie comme priorité, ce partenariat Sud-Sud, ce partenariat interafricain.
When lost, explore. When blocked, innovate. When all is closed, build. In a time of recession, accelerate. Now is the time to find opportunities, to come together and curate new deals, track investments, and close deals.
Let the transactions begin.
Join us at the 2021 African Investment Forum and invest in Africa's future. Build back boldly, better, greener, and faster.
Welcome back to the second part of Initiative Africa. Teaching differently is a reality in some places in Kenya. Mathare, a sporting club unlike any other, is located in a vast slum on the outskirts of the capital Nairobi, where 90,000 people live without access to water or electricity services. Its mission? Supporting youth through sports activities and community services. Sporting success and inspiring life experiences are some of the outcomes. Take a look.
Mathare is one of Africa's biggest shanty towns. This huge, poverty-stricken neighborhood in the outskirts of Nairobi, Kenya, has every characteristic of run-down inner cities, criminality, drugs, AIDS, and millions of tons of household waste endangering the health of local residents. It is also home to the Mathare Youth Sport Association, a sports club that has transformed the day-to-day lives of thousands of local youngsters and the people of Mathare.
If you're going to get something from the community, you should be putting something back into the community. And that's where we made it into a community development project using football as the starting point. After discussing various options, one of the worst things in the slum is the uncollected garbage, because that kills the kids.
The idea was both simple and effective. Football gave local youth a healthy framework and a goal, helping the local community. One Saturday per month, each team takes to the streets, swapping shin pads and football shirts for shovels and picks to tackle the piles of rubbish. In 1987, there were 27 teams. Today, there are over 1,000, with 14,000 players. Now Mathare is officially the biggest youth sports association on the African continent. Unofficially, it is also probably the continent's largest refuse collection organization. Victor is 16. He has been playing football for as long as he has been able to walk. He spends 1/5 of his training time cleaning Mathare's gutters with support from the local inhabitants.
They give us an encouragement. So they say that that is good work we are doing. And we are so happy to do this work because we are trying to help our neighbors. It's hard to get somebody trying to take papers, cleaning around. It's very hard. So it's our pleasure to take this opportunity to clean for people.
Mathare Sports Association has its own championship with a unique point system. A win earns you 3 points, spending a Saturday tackling trash earns you 6. Victor is one of his generation's rising stars. The trophies in his bedroom are surely the first of many.
I'm here. This is our coach. Yeah. We stayed in Holland for 1 week. We played friendly matches that we won all of them. This is the medal that we won. It was a tournament in Norway, so we took the first place. This is my shelf where I put my books. I study from here.
The Mathare Development Project has been a spectacular sporting success. Just 10 years after starting the association, they have a professional Premier League team that has won the Kenyan Championship several times. In the space of a decade, they have notched up a number of trophies and are the envy of many long-established clubs. Victor is competing for a selection to take part in an international tournament in Norway. The Norway Cup is a World Cup for under-16s, a title his club won in 2003.
I want to produce the best players. I want to make them to be the best. Before I win the tournament, I have to develop their skills first and then to win.
Having successfully completed stage 1, the aptly named Victor is now one of 40 players shortlisted. 2 more tests stand between him and a place in the squad of 20 players with a chance to shine in Northern Europe.
I know that he can go ahead because of his determination and because of his ability and because of his discipline so far. He's a very disciplined boy and he wants to do that.
I'll just wait for the next day until the last time. When I'm being selected for the last time, I'll celebrate.
At Mathare, sport is above all a life lesson from the turf to the top. The club stays true to its mission to educate the youngsters. The directors are democratically elected by each team, and the average age of the staff is less than 30, a first in a club of its importance.
Our guest, Khalbous, rector of the Agence Universitaire de la Francophonie, shares his vision of the future of the French language in Africa, but also his conviction that the Francophonie is adapting to a new international standard. One issue that's difficult to ignore is the rise of insecurity in some African countries. As the director of the AUF, do you share this concern? What can be envisaged to work to continue to promote education within this context?
On ne peut pas rester insensible face à ce genre de questions.
We cannot remain indifferent to these kinds of questions. There are sometimes terrible social issues. You mentioned violence, political uncertainty. Unfortunately, it can become terrorism in some countries. Of course, we are concerned about these issues. The idea is not just to be worried, it is to come up with concrete solutions.
Et aujourd'hui, il y a des systèmes qui sont en train de se développer.
And today there are new methods that are developing, systems of mediation and conflict management in university and educational institutions. So again, maybe that's the experience of having gone through a ministry. We have launched a mediation and conflict management network in Tunisia's universities. It's a system that works very well, which has been in place for 2 years now, with legislation that has been approved to support the creation of the system.
Et donc ce système, je pense qu'il peut être étalé.
And I think this can be extended to a lot of other countries. I mention all this to several ministers who were quite interested because today it's a skill, mediation without taking sides. It's not like union mediation, it's not political mediation, it's mediation between peers, between academics, between students and academics, between the administrations and the student. Often there are internal conflicts. The role of the university must be to teach, to instruct, to hand out diplomas. But it's also to provide culture, to provide education, and to manage these small social conflicts. I say small because usually they're small to begin with, but if left untreated, they can become serious and, from college, spread into the street, so to say, and then it becomes very serious. The idea is that university also has a very important social role. In this context, we will try to set up with those who are interested, those who feel the need, support systems for mediation and to monitor conflicts, because outside conflicts are not strictly a direct concern. Instead, conflicts at university are up to us, because we cannot do our job if there is violence, if there are repeated strikes, if there are misunderstandings between students and teachers. Obviously, these would bring the education system to a complete halt. So there you have it. That's how you see it from an academic point of view. In any case, the idea is to take care of the youngsters at our university.
Some say the French language is in decline in primary and secondary education in Africa and among young people in general. Do you agree? And is there a threat to the French language in universities?
Bien sûr que je l'aperçois. Moi, je viens d'un pays très francophone.
Yes, I am aware of that, of course. I come from a French-speaking country, but now it's being challenged. I wouldn't say there's a decline, as some might, but a loss. In fact, the world has changed, and therefore the promotion of the French language must also change. This is not necessarily a problem, but it's a matter of how to promote French. That's why we changed our strategy at AUF. At AUF, when we decided to no longer do programs that originate from a certain number of experts, even if well-intentioned, but programs instead that have been requested by the countries themselves. It's mainly to respond to a real demand from French-speaking countries, from French-speaking youth. Young people are very pragmatic. They go where they want to go. Young people today aspire to a good career. Young people want to travel, want to have an international career. Young people love the internet, all the social networks, everything that provides a direct contact. Today, problems of access to information are common. The issue for the Francophone world is how to best adapt to this new but inevitable situation.
Nous, on propose beaucoup de pistes. La première,
and we offer a lot of leads. The first is to consider the French-speaking world in the context of plurilingualism. We're not against any language, quite the contrary. We use Francophonie to tell young people to learn as many languages as possible. The more languages you learn, the better for you, for your career, and for your general knowledge. Simply, our role as a university agency for the French language is to tell them this is the added value of French. This is what French can bring you to your daily life, for your career, to go international. These are all the opportunities in the French-speaking world. And to understand the French-speaking world is very diverse, very large. There are many countries. Some countries are totally French-speaking, others, they are interesting French-speaking enclaves where you can build a career and so on. We have a new message for the young. First, to say, don't feel bad, as we're quite at ease with the perspective of complementing other language. Then we point out the usefulness of French. You can achieve much of what you want in life by learning French. It's our role to do so, and I think that Francophone science keeps this open mindset of like thinking, of co-construction, of utility. There is no reason for young people to move away from French. They will understand the raison d'être to learn French, and they will see the benefits, even if at the same time they will want, and that will be right to do so, to learn other languages.
Ils auront raison d'apprendre d'autres langues.
Slim Khalbous, thank you very much.
Thank you for the invitation.
Well, Initiative Africa is over for today. You can, of course, catch Slim Khalbous' interview and the replay of our programs on our news website, africaonair.com. And, of course, you can also find us on all our social media channels. Feel free to share, like, and comment with the hashtag Initiative Africa TV show. And don't forget, next week, same time, same channel, I'll see you again with a new edition of Business Africa. Have a great week and goodbye.